The storm arrived without warning. Thick black clouds churned over the city, swallowing the sun and casting the skyline into an eternal dusk. The wind screamed through the streets, carrying the scent of rain and something else, something metallic like blood. It started with light showers, then turned into a downpour that lasted for days, then weeks. The power flickered. The streets flooded. The city ground to a halt, its people trapped beneath an oppressive, unending sky. Then the creatures came. It was the children who saw them first. Shapes moving within the storm, shifting in the clouds like shadows behind frosted glass. Angels, some called them. Others weren't so sure. Their wings were too long, too jagged. Their eyes, when they peered down through the lightning, were too bright, too hungry. The mayor, Elias Warwick, had no answers. People came to him in droves, pleading for explanations, for safety. But what could he tell them? That the sky itself had come alive? That something ancient and unknowable had made their city its home? For the first week, the creatures only watched, circling, waiting. Then the first body fell. A man named Daniel Norris was lifted into the sky, screaming by something no one saw. He flailed against the storm, arms and legs kicking as he disappeared into the dark. Minutes later he returned, dropped from thousands of feet above. His bones shattered on the pavement outside City Hall. His body was torn open, as if something had fed before letting go. Elias saw it happen. He was the first to reach the body, his hands shaking as he touched the blood-slick pavement. More screams rose around him, people scrambling to shelter as the shadows above circled lower. Then another, a woman this time. Her scream barely lasted before she was gone, yanked into the sky, her hands clawing at nothing. She, too, returned in pieces. And then another. The city fell into hysteria. People refused to leave their homes. The sound of breaking glass and gunfire echoed through the flooded streets as looters took what they could. But it didn't matter where you hid. The creatures took who they wanted, when they wanted, and no one knew how to stop them. Until Elias shot one down, it had been circling low, its hulking form barely visible through the slanted rain. Desperation drove him. His rifle cracked through the storm, and the creature shrieked, a sound like metal scraping against bone. It fell, its body twisting violently as it tumbled through the air, crashing onto a car with a sickening crunch. Silence. For the first time in weeks, the city was still. The rain hissed against the corpse. Its wings, leathery, skeletal, too many joints bending in too many places, twitched feebly. Its glowing eyes flickered, then dimmed. Black blood oozed down its torso, pooling in the cracks of the pavement. People gathered, staring in stunned horror. The thing was real, killable. A shudder of hope rippled through the crowd. Then the sky roared. The creatures, once distant, once patient, moved all at once. A storm of wings and talons. They dove into the streets, lifting people, dozens at a time. The screams were deafening. Men, women, children, it didn't matter. The creatures ripped into them midair, their enormous jaws clamping down, severing limbs before letting the remains fall like rain. The buildings ran red with blood. The streets became a slaughterhouse. Elias could do nothing. He ran, pushed through the chaos, his mind blank with terror. This was his fault. His people looked to him for protection, and he had damned them all. The city emptied. Those who weren't taken fled, but there was nowhere to go. The storm stretched beyond the city limits, swallowing highways, cutting off all escape. The creatures hunted relentlessly, one by one, until only Elias remained. For days he hid in the ruins of City Hall. The radio was static, his phone dead. The streets, once filled with thousands, lay eerily silent beneath the rain. The storm had drowned everything. Then one morning the rain slowed. Elias stepped outside, his legs weak, his breath ragged. The clouds were thinning, the sky above shifting to a deep, unnatural shade of violet. The creatures were still there, circling, but their movements were slower, less focused. Their work was done. One by one they disappeared, dissolving into the clouds. The last of them, larger than the rest, its wings a tapestry of scars, paused to look down at Elias. He held its gaze. His city, his people, gone. The thing cocked its head, almost as if considering him. Then with a single powerful beat of its wings, it ascended into the storm and was gone. The sky cleared, the sun broke through the clouds, the rain stopped, and Elias Warwick stood alone in a city of corpses, waiting for the next storm to come.